The views, information, or opinions expressed during the Seeds of Wellbeing series are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the University of Hawaii College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources, or funders, and any affiliated organizations involved in this project. Welcome to a Seeds of Wellbeing Voices from the Field podcast featuring voices of Hawaii agriculture producers for Hawaii agriculture producers. These podcasts are made possible by a grant from the University of Hawaii College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources, also known as CTAHR, and the Seeds of Wellbeing, or SOW project, and is supported by a grant from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, and the Hawaii Department of Agriculture. The intention of these podcast series is to create a safe space for respectful and inclusive dialogue with people from across a broad and diverse spectrum involved in growing and making accessible the food we share together. A diversity of voices, perspectives, and experiences can serve to deepen mutual understanding, to spark creative problem solving, and provide insight into the complexities of our agricultural system. If you, or listeners, have experiences with Hawaii agriculture ecosystem, from indigenous methods, permaculture, smallholder farmers, to large, including multinational agricultural industrial companies, and everywhere in between, and you would like to share your story, please contact us. We welcome your voices and perspectives. Welcome to another episode of the Seeds of Wellbeing podcast. Today, I'm delighted to introduce you to Charley Jordan, who is an Army veteran farmer in the state of Tennessee. Welcome, Charley, to our podcast, and thank you for your willingness to share your stories.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Charley. Can we start off with just having you describe a little bit about your experience as a veteran and what prompted you to get into farming?
Okay, yeah, that's I always tell everybody it's kind of a long story, but I grew up military. I've never known life without a green ID card. So my life's was started out in Gulf Breeze, Florida, Pensacola Beach. So I was a surfer and skateboarder kid. And one real early time frame in 1980s, my grandfather, he was a recruiter in the Army, and we had the opportunity to go to Sioux Falls, South Dakota from Florida. So it was kind of a shock. I was about 10 or 11 years old. And but when I got there, that was my first initial exposure to agriculture. I know I was very young. I spent only about 2 years there, 10 to about 12 years old, but it made an impression on me that never left me. And the reason why is that I have lots of friends there when I was going to school that were all farm kids, and I was a city kid. I lived on a little, peninsula in Florida, and then I was a city kid living in Sioux Falls, and they brought me out to their farms, and it just absolutely changed me. I could not get enough of it. My grandparents who, I was living with, they could not get me to go home. I wanted to live with my friends out on the farm. So I got to experience row cropping. I got to experience one of my friends had a hog farm. I remember a cattle operation, and all those things were so vividly just ingrained into my head that I never forgot them. So fast forward, I joined the Army in 1989. We had moved back to Florida, and I finished up high school there in Florida, and I decided that I didn't think my surfing career was going to amount to much, and my options were to either, with my current where I was living with my grandparents, was to either become a priest or join the Army, like my grandfather. So I said, well, I think I'm going to join the Army. So I decided to join the Army in 1989, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made. And I'm so glad I did. I spent about half my career in different Army jobs and different duty stations, including Germany, where I actually got to volunteer doing some farming and agriculture, actually in Germany when I was stationed there in the mid-90s. And then also after flight school, I got to go to Korea and I got to experience some Korean agriculture, and I got to work in some rice fields. I got to work with some Wagyu cattle, operations there. So it was a culture shock, of course. But it was all that knowledge. It was more agricultural knowledge that I was gaining. So my time came back to the States from Korea, and I decided I wanted to be a special operations aviator. And I got to be chosen to go to the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment here in the States. And I stayed there for about 14 years. My rest of my career, I retired out of there in 2017 as a Chief Warrant Officer 4. And I was an operations officer plus a thing we'll call flight lead, mission leader in the regiment. But the whole time I was already doing agriculture, and this all started in 2001. This path I'm on now. I had a chance to come back to Fort Campbell, and I was like, I want to have a little farm. So I decided I would look on a mid-tour visit from Korea. I came back to Fort Campbell, Kentucky area, and I looked at over 30 houses in 2 days. And the last house I looked at is the one that I'm in right now. And it was a little 5-acre plot with a little itty bitty house and a little tiny garage. And I was married at the time, and I was like, you know what? I think this is how I'm going to start my farm life. So, I got back to the States in August 2001, and then September 11th happened, and lots of things changed for me. So my life of deployments started in 2002, and they didn't stop until 2015 was my last deployment. I enjoyed every one of them. They were great, but I like being in the States better. And I was a whole time working on my agricultural operation. So I started out with horses first in the early 2000s. And that was due to my stepdaughter at the time being in a junior and high school rodeo here for the state of Tennessee. And then the desire to have horses and the farm stuff kind of switched for her, and she wanted more boys and cars. So that kind of went away, and I was stuck with the horses, and I was stuck with the cows that we had because she used to do team roping. So I decided, well, I don't really want, to keep the cows around because I know they're going to get big and giant, and I really don't have the room. So I went ahead and processed them, and I took the meat in a freezer to my local my unit, and I sold it all to my buddies, and I emptied the freezer in probably about 30 minutes, and I was like, well, I really didn't make a lot of money. So I quickly learned, and I like to call them self-critiquing moments, that I didn't really charge enough for the beef that I was selling. So there was lesson number one about price pointing, how much I'm supposed to price my products. So there started the real learning about agriculture. And that at that moment, I thought, hey, I'm kind of onto something here. So my first agricultural real endeavor was with Texas Longhorns and Hereford cattle. I wanted a type of beef that was very low in fat, very lean meat, very healthy meat. My niche market was the healthy community of Fort Campbell and the surrounding area of Clarksville, Tennessee, Montgomery County. And so that was my niche, and I sold a lot of beef. But then I decided, as I was getting close to retirement in about 2015, I decided I wanted to try something different. I wanted to try horticulture. And my first dive into horticulture was working with tomatoes. And I failed miserably. I tried a tomato called a mortgage lifter. It was supposed to be such a great tomato. And because of the name mortgage lifter, it would, it would make a lot of money, sell a lot of them. And I quickly learned that after having over 240 tomato plants, the count was 4 that I had that actually survived after 2 months. Wow. Only, I didn't get any fruit at all. So that was a lesson real quick that I learned. But the one thing I did learn, and the biggest lesson, was I companion planted for my tomatoes. And I planted zinnias. I planted some ageratum. I planted sunflowers, marigolds, African marigolds, which are very large. And all of those survived, but none of my tomatoes lived. And I was like, well, maybe I'm on to flowers now. So I decided to go to the Master Gardener course, which was put on by the University of Tennessee Extension Service here in Clarksville, Tennessee. So I learned a more deeper level of being a gardener and paying more attention to the soil, which I didn't do on my first go around. So I decided I'd sell the cattle farm, and I sold my entire cattle operation, equipment and all, to another Marine veteran here locally, because he really wanted to continue it on, and they're doing fantastic. And my life has taken me now to floriculture. And the picture behind me was actually taken this morning with my drone. And that's about 3/4 of the operation. There's actually more that's in my front pasture. And there's more in the wood line towards the end of my sunflowers, which are right there, wood line right there. There's actually a man-made mushroom cave in there. It's about 75 foot long. It houses over 200 logs of shiitake and all natural mushrooms. Of course, I have my hoop house, which you can see, which is gained through a program through the NRCS, which is part of the USDA. Wow. And that big old giant field of flowers there, double fields, are over 7,000 stems of flowers this year. I have about 35 different varieties. About 7 different varieties of sunflowers are planted in over 16 different sunflower strips. They're over 100 foot long and 6 foot wide. And I have a wildflower bed that I house just about little everything I kind of throw in there just to see what'll grow. My hoop house is my season extender. I've only had it for 2 years now. It's also my own little personal research facility. I grow things in there that I want to try for the next year. My main thing I'm growing in there now is Lysianthus. It's a type of real pretty kind of rosy looking flower, and I'm trying different varieties of that, and also delphinium, which doesn't do really good in our cremate type summers that we have here. But I'm giving it a shot, and we'll see what we have. And next year I might do more of them. But everything is changed. I went from only having 3 little tiny strips of flowers, and selling at the farmers market. And my first trial was 3 years ago, and I brought a couple buckets of flowers to our farmers market here in Clarksville downtown market. And I sold those buckets really quick, and I was like, well, this is kind of cool. So those 3 beds expanded to 8 beds last year, and they're in the same place, which is right where my big old head is. And there was 8 beds there. And of course, I've expanded this year to kind of nuttiness, but I have a lot of flowers now, and I have no worries about having enough flowers to last me through the market season, which will go all the way through October. I'll probably have more into October until our first freeze. I'm also a brand new beekeeper this year. I went through a course through Michigan State University called Heroes to Hives. It's for veterans. It is completely 100% free. You can look it up, Heroes to Hives. And we had a huge class last year. It was a massive class in 2021. And it's a 9-month course, and you get all access to all the material once you graduate. And so I'm a first-time beekeeper. I have 2 hives right now. One's kind of finicky, and the other one is hooking and jabbing, making the honey for the money. So I absolutely love it. So yeah.
So Charley,
yes.
From what I'm hearing, it's amazing. You have traversed very different areas of the whole spectrum, from cows to tomatoes to flowers to bees, now mushrooms. So
yes.
Can I ask you, reflect on, because part of what we're trying to explore is what's the nature of well-being, and how are some of the resources and coping skills that you have could help navigate some of the stressors? Because you said your tomatoes failed, but it's like, no problem. You transitioned to something else. So what keeps you going to takes on different challenges and to explore different possibilities?
Well, when I transitioned out of the military, I was I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but I was still a very lost soul. At that point, just getting out, the first 6 months, I was a mess. I didn't have what I like to call that, my purpose, motivation, and direction. And I needed to find that. So, I did. I reached out, to my local Cohen Clinic, military family treatment clinic here in Clarksville, and I needed to talk to somebody. And I was like, wait, I was like, I have them as a support too. And I started looking more at my farm and going, it's right here in front of me. Everything that I want for myself is right here on my little 5 acres. And I just gotta, get my, head out of my, and get out there and put my veteran head forward and go for it. And that's what I did. And I can't, I can't thank it enough. I can't thank, enough for agriculture, what it's brought into my life, and horticulture also. I had no idea, that I would go from, flying helicopters and aviation, to special operations to selling bouquets. That wasn't really the path I saw myself going. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still find motivation and solace in aviation also. That's what my main degree is. And I'm also an adjunct professor for Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. I still teach aviation and legislation and other subjects to undergrad students. And all of that combined with agriculture and everything gave me a real purpose and my motivation and my direction to want to just get, bigger, larger, and to make my operation as successful as it can be. I call myself a vetrepreneur. I saw that, I found that agriculture and putting my hands into the ground and grounding myself back to the earth, that I've been away for so long, wearing combat boots for 28 and a half years and not really putting my hands and feet back into the soil. And once I did, it really just changed me. It really just awakened me. It was, as I look at it now, and as I look at my plants the same way that, the earth is just a big giant electromagnetic field. It's just one big giant light socket. And once you put your hands into it, or put your feet into it, and once you put that plug in the ground with that little flower, and you can watch it just explode after, a few months, then I just saw how healing that could be, and okay. I wanted to look at, as my path is going now with horticulture therapy. I'm in my last course right now for my horticulture therapist certification course through University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And I'm blown away at how interesting and how fascinating it is. And I never thought that I would just be so connected to it and find so much interest in it, on top of, I'm going back to, I'm in school right now through a scholarship through the VA to finish my agricultural education degree, because that's a goal that I want to do. I want to be able to share, all my knowledge and everything I've learned in my journey with other veterans, especially transitioning veterans, to let them know that, hey, agriculture is a possible path, but, it's not for everybody. I totally understand that. But, even doing a little garden in your backyard, to me, that's still farming. That's still agriculture. You're still providing for yourself, and I think veterans just have this just great connection to agriculture. I believe we're a perfect fit to be farmers. We have our personal motivation, and I look at the different demographics within, say a career in the military, your 4-year first termers, maybe, wouldn't always fit right into going out and having their big, operation by themselves. Not all of them do, but some of them could go and work in ag business and get degrees, and work in agricultural, business aspects. And then I look at, myself being the 20-year plus person that really doesn't want to work for corporate America. We really don't want to sit in a cubicle. I mean, some of them might, some not, but we kind of just want to be our own person. We want to have maybe our own homestead. And then when you start doing that, you'll start seeing the healing qualities of it and the grounding and the mindfulness and where it all just comes together and so peaceful. I find, if I drive down Interstate 24 from Nashville to Clarksville, I have to go sit in my flowers. It's one of those roads, and I find absolute peace. Once I go out and I sit in between them and I talk to them, I can smell them, I can feel them. I watch everything around them, and I watch my bees, coming around getting mad at me because I'm sitting on the top of the white clover, which is fine by me. Oh, well, there's plenty of it, but just all of that surrounding me, I never really thought how healing that could be, because I deal with my own demons. I'm not free of certain things, but this is how I deal with it. And through great therapy and some great medication and some awesome horticulture therapy that I do really for myself, and also providing back for, my own veterans, and active duty also. I just can't think of anything better, honestly. I know I'm kind of.
Yeah, so you did mention that being on the ground, getting your hands into the soil takes you out of your veteran head. Can you, and then elaborate, if you can elaborate a little bit about how does the horticultural therapy works for doing that?
Well, horticulture therapy is therapy by working with plants. And I know when I did the other talk with Agribility about farm stress, I talked about biophilia. And that's a phrase that was coined by E.O. Wilson, that, humans have this innate, connection with nature, and he believed that, and also Eric Fromm, who coined the phrase biophilia first, both of them had the same idea that, our connection to nature, if we became more connected with it, then we would be less destructive, towards it. And it would become more part of it. And I see that more and more as, I go out with, my plants. I have to weed them it's a living organism, and weeds are always there trying to take over the beautiful little flower field that I have behind my head here. And they're relentless, but you know what? That's okay, because that's healing, and that's part of the whole process. Me going out there and weeding for 2.5 hours might, sound like God, but I get the best thinking of my, existence when I'm out there just weeding, and I'm calm, and I'm not thinking about things that may have happened in my life in the past. I'm thinking about the present. I'm meditating while I'm actually doing horticulture at the moment. And I love that whole combination, and I just think it makes me stronger. It doesn't make me, weaker or any part. It actually seems to make my mind stronger and be able to have, more resilience, and that's, I want to be, the best veteran I can be. And I want to be, the best civilian I can be, and I think I make a better veteran right now, but that's the way I like it. And I want to share all this with other veterans to show them, that, hey, you can do this too. I'm not doing anything special. This is, agriculture has been around for eons. I just found a way that works for me, and no two agricultural operations are alike. And everybody gets their own healing and their own satisfaction from their own work that they do. And, always I put out too that, if you want your operation to be successful, you can have the $1 million dreams, but don't have a minimum wage work ethic, because you're not going to get there. And use your farm, your operation as a healing for you, and I found that, and I can't say more about it. I always like to share it. When people come out here, I make them take shoes off, and said, feel the ground, just feel the grass. 85% of our population lives in the concrete jungle. And you're walking on sidewalks all the time, you're walking on streets, pavement, concrete, inside carpeted wood, whatever, take your shoes off for a little bit, go outside, just for, give yourself 20 to 30 minutes, kind of ground yourself back in, into the earth, and feel it, and it may not be your thing, but I bet you'll come back to it, because you're going to find something that's satisfactory to that. You're going to hear silence. You're going to hear birds. You're going to hear all the sounds of nature and the wind and the leaves, and you're going to feel that grass in between your toes, and it's life changing. At least it changed my life for sure.
So what would be some of the challenges to get the veterans to even try agriculture? Or quit agriculture if once they try it? What you have noticed as some of the barriers or challenges?
I don't really. I mean, every challenge that I face, I face it just like I did any mission. Anything. If I have a drought like I'm in right now, in this area, I just look at it. I formulate an operations order in my head using 5 steps of the op order, at least in the Army. And I go through and I said, okay, this is how I'm gonna get through this. I'm not gonna let it get me down because I can't, because I have people who are depending on me that are customers. And just like when I was in the military, my customers depended on me to make sure that I completed that mission, that I didn't leave them behind, that I inserted them where they needed to be. So my customers depend on me to have that real pretty bouquet on Saturday from 8 to 12 in the morning. So that's my mission. That's my objective, that's my target. And I will work my hardest through the entire week, no matter what. If I have, the drought like I have now, well, I'm just going to have to water more. I'm just going to have to pay attention more. I'm going to have to be out there more. I'm going to have to, just work harder. And to failures are, I haven't had a failure that's completely stopped me. I've learned from every failure that I've had. I talked about, my dog over here. I talked about my, tomato journey. I've tried other things too that didn't work. One thing I tried with chickens. Honest to God, chickens are the catalyst for everything agriculture that's out there. Once a veteran gets like a hen, 2 or 3 hens, it's over with. I'm serious. They're going to want to have more hens. They're going to want to have turkeys, guineas. Then it's going to move to goats, and then progress on. It's just a great process. It's wonderful to watch it actually happen. And I've known some veterans that have, hit some struggles. We're all having struggles right now with the, price of diesel, the price of fertilizer, the price of land. Just to even have land to go and start, a farm right now. It's hard. I know it is difficult, so I understand the stressors that they're facing, but diversify. If what you're doing is causing you stress. The cattle I was doing was causing me stress. I'm not going to, lie about it. Going and getting a call, from a sheriff that, have a cow in the middle of the road at 3 o'clock in the morning, that got kind of old, and especially a bull, longhorn bull, it's a iffy thing right there. So, that was a stressor, always having to worry about fencing and stuff. And my, like I said, my path, I think, was, bringing me towards the floriculture world, with flowers. And so I had to make that choice. And it was the best choice I made. And what I did is I diversified. And I didn't let that stress stop me from agriculture. I was like, I could have quit after the cattle and just said, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. I was tired of cutting hay, all that stuff. I'm done with it. But then I was like, no, because I'm not going to be happy. I'm like, what else am I going to do? I'm not going to go and work in corporate America. That's just not where I'm going to go. So I looked to something else and I diversified, and it was the best decision I made.
Charley, so I'm hearing that you make choice, and between stressors and choice, there's a space in between. How do you navigate between the stressor? Because some people, the choice could be an unhealthy choice, but you seem to be moving in the direction of a healthy sort of choice. So I'm interested in that space between the stressor and the good choices or the good problem solving skills that you have. What is there?
Okay, for me, and this is my definition, this is just as only me, 51-year-old Charley Jordan, is that education. I dove deep into everything that I was getting involved in. So if it was when I got into cattle, I learned everything I could about cattle. I participated in a course called a Master Beef Producer course. That was through the University of Tennessee Extension Service. And then I did an Advanced Master Beef course, which is also by UT Extension Service. And then I did a bunch of online and courses. I went to a lot of cattle conferences, and this is all before I had cows, because I wanted to learn everything I could about it. I looked in toward the financial part. How much is fencing? How much, is every piece of the fencing? How much is that going to cost me? How much is feed? How much is, do I cut my own hay, or do I, buy hay? And do I buy new equipment? Do I buy old equipment? So all these things were taken in consideration, because I'm a very analytical person. I'm a very one thing that the Army taught me, especially in special operations, is to be very nitpicky, be very, minute details in every little thing that I do, because all those things, if you miss something, that may come back to haunt you. So I wanted to know everything. So I wrote in a complete business plan of how I was going to run this cattle operation. And I did, and I started out with 5 cows. Now, I learned really quick about something, and I didn't plan for this, that I had those 5 cows inside a barn, and I got deployed for about 45 days. I came back, and those cows got a little bit bigger, and I didn't really have a plan to get those cows from the barn to the back pasture. So there was the education process that started. There was 4 other warrant officers that we got out there, and we wrangled these things into the back pasture. That was a self-critiquing moment, and that was a part that I needed to learn. So as I transitioned going from cattle, moving out of that, moving into the floral industry and floricultural world, I just dove myself into education. Again, I wanted to know how much it was going to cost to buy plugs. I'm a one veteran operation. I direct seed some things, but I usually plant all plugs. So I had to learn how to work through greenhouses, and I wanted to give back to my local greenhouses. And so I studied all those aspects, and that took me to the Master Gardener course. And then I started, attending lots of conferences, and I started learning more about it. And once I found that as diving into it was going to be more of a gain, I was looking at getting a little bit of gain now in my agricultural endeavors, that I went ahead and made that step. And it started out a little bit, like I had to learn how to build a bouquet. That's kind of, one thing I really didn't know how to do. So I looked a lot of internet stuff. I learned how to build bouquets. And then the pandemic came, and the pandemic was the best year I've ever had in an entire 20-something years of agricultural work. People wanted to smile for the pandemic, so they wanted bouquets. So my flowers were very much, and people wanted them. So that gave me, that made me happy, to see somebody smile. That's therapy for me. I've seen in my career, I saw a lot of stuff that wasn't good. I saw the worst in things. War isn't exactly a pretty thing. And I wanted to make people smile, because I saw a lot of hate and a lot of hurt during my years in the military. So flowers to me just gave me an outlet to make people smile, and that's how I give back. So.
Oh, I think that's so beautiful. And I hear that you said you're one veteran farming. So this whole production that I see and you're sharing is just you, no other help. Holy moly!
That's it. Yeah, it's yeah, it's me. So
how do you find the balance if it's just you? You're saying that you're up at 3 sometimes, dealing. So how do you find that balance? Because time management is a big stressor, right?
Everything you can see behind me is everything's dressed in a certain way, because that's just the military and the OCD in me. But everything is planned out. I have everything planned out usually by the end of July for the following year. So I'm knee deep in planning right now for the next year. So as my flowers are growing, and I don't have to do much maintenance with them, I'm planning for next year. So all of this that you see behind me, everything is measured out. And I look at, my sun, where my sun is, where my wind direction is, and where my property is on basically east-west line. So I get lots of sun, and it's awesome. I do a lot of study on my soils. So the big black landscape fabric areas that you see behind me, both of those are 100 long by 50 foot wide, and each line holds 288 flowers. So each bed in that whole area is brought in with a couple of dump trucks of compost that come in around October, November. And they dump them. I put it out, I let it sit, and my vacation time starts. So I go on vacation. It's in the wintertime, but I don't mind. So I go out and do my thing, and when I come back, and my flowers start arriving. So I start planting around January, and they go into the hoop house that's behind me, and I start some early flowers that need a little bit of time to build a root system. So I usually have enough flowers to be ready by Mother's Day, which will all be hoop house flowers. The outside flowers are all annuals, some perennials, but most of them are annuals. They are planted about mid-April. With luck, I won't have a late frost. But with this landscape fabric, what it does for me is it heats the ground. It heats up the temperature of the soil. It burns off the weeds. Each one of those flowers, the hole is burned by myself. So I burned every single hole on that thing with a branding iron. And usually I can get through one line, 100-foot line, 288 planting spots. I can get through that usually in about 25 to 30 minutes. And one line gets planted right after that. I'll go ahead and plant because I don't want it to sit because weeds will start coming up. So I usually plant. It takes me about 40 minutes to plant one line of flowers. So,
Wow.
So yeah, that's take a dibbler, put the flower in, move to the next one. So yeah.
My goodness. My goodness.
Yeah, it's a little bit of work, hey, but you know what? It's great exercise. You get lots of vitamin D.
Yeah.
You get, it's a really cool operation. I've loved it. I didn't think I really would, but when I go outside and I see, all the pollinators, I see all the different flowers that are growing now. I have so many now. And just to be able to rub my hands through them, it's a pretty awesome feeling,
Wow.
It really is.
I can definitely feel your passion and your hard, dedicated commitment to doing this, and your meaning that you're deriving so much. Are there any we're at the end of our podcast. So any last words of wisdom to our veteran farmers out there?
I would just say, first thing is to, find the operation that's going to give you, your purpose, motivation, and direction. Sometimes it's going to give you that drive to keep going day to day. And then get educated on whatever that you're going to do, and get overeducated on it. Know everything about it. Know left and right, up and down, every part of that, so there's, always going to be things that are going to come up, but at least you have a good base knowledge. And then the last thing is never give up. Mother Nature does have the last call, but you can prepare for things. And I just wish, everybody that may be listening to this, that may be a veteran farmer, or even a beginning farmer, or even somebody who might be thinking about farming, I just wish them the best success in the world.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Charley, for joining our podcast. We want to thank our guests for their generosity and mana'o. We also want to thank all our ag producers throughout the islands, and especially those we have heard on the podcast, for discussing ways they address the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual dimensions of Hawaii ag production. Each story, each voice contributes to a broader understanding of what it takes to survive and thrive as we feed our communities. Wherever you may find yourself within our island agriculture economies, if you would like to share your story in our podcast, please contact us. Thank you for listening to the Seeds of Wellbeing, Voices from the Field podcast, featuring their perspectives of ag producers throughout the Hawaii Islands. If you have found it helpful, please follow, like, and share this episode with others. And if you have any ideas about how we can make it better, please let us know in the comments or use the link on our website. Mahalo for tuning in.